Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Wallsend history story. This week I am covering a brief history of the building plans of the opening of Richardson Dees School on Wallsend High Street. I hope you will find it interesting. Before I begin though, can I just say that I am currently testing out a new microphone. I am hoping it will give better sound quality to the videos, but at the moment I am having a couple of issues with it, one being the sound level on playback, but please bear with me as I am hoping to sort this out soon, and do let me know if you have any issues hearing the audio on this video. The idea of a new school was first discussed some 6 years before it was actually built. A lot of these discussions were about where, costs, type of school, etc. So I won't cover all of those meetings as most were very similar. However, I will cover any little parts that I feel are worth a mention. In 1897, a meeting of the school board was held where it was felt that the land offered by Robert Richardson Dees on which to build the new school should be accepted. Although Mr. Dees often gave land as gifts to the town, such as he had done with the land for Wallsend Park, this land was actually for sale, so it would be included in the cost of the building of the school. The land in question was in an area known as Davison's Lunnon, and I had never heard the area called this before, but I did do a quick Google search which led me to believe that this was an area used by the farm that was once located at the bottom of Boyd Road. Now you may wonder why I mentioned that, as this was where the school was eventually built. Well, it's because at the time there was opposition to the use of this land, which meant I needed to find out where it was before I found the details of the plan being approved, on the off chance that it was actually in a different place. Canon Henderson was the main opposition to the school being built on this land. He felt it would mean that school children would have to pass this new school to get to the church school, and I take the church school to be St. Peter's, and he thought that they would end up leaving the church school and then go to the new school, and that the church school would need to close down. Around 127 children would need to pass Richardson Dees School to get to St. Peter's. The church school also did not charge for education, whereas the board school did. So if the children moved schools, it was likely to cost the ratepayers more money than it did at present. Canon Henderson said they had room for 360 children and had current vacancies for 80. Sir J.B. Hunter agreed with Canon Henderson, stating that if the church school had vacancies, then there seemed no reason to build a school in that area, as it was adequately covered already. However, Robert Richardson Dees pointed out that at the time there were plans to build some 375 new houses in that area, and that there would have to be a school to accommodate the extra children from these new houses, and also that they currently had overpopulated schools in the area, some with 522 children attending, but only space for 420, so he felt a new school was very much needed indeed, and he saw no reason why children would leave one school for another. Mr. Allen stated similar, in that he felt if the education was good at the church school as it was at the board school, there would be no need to fear children moving schools just because they walked past one to get to the other. Discussions continued along similar lines for the rest of the meeting until eventually a vote was taken and it was agreed to build the school on the land belonging to Robert Richardson Dees, with almost all in agreement. As I have said before, talks went on for several years, and finally in 1899 plans were approved for the building style and costs. It was said that at the time the first estimated cost to build the school would be around £22,000, though some articles say as much as £30,000. This would include spaces for around 1,500 children and some office space. The main delay had been down to costs, and this first estimate was felt to be too much. The board wanted the cost reduced as much as possible, and after the builder had submitted new plans at a lower rate, it was finally approved. However, the cost is not mentioned in this particular article. That is not mentioned until later. By August of 1900, work is well underway of the building of the new school. However, as I often say, Wallsend was expanding rapidly and the school was needed quicker than ever. There was a lot of pressure on the builders to have the infant school opened as soon as possible to relieve some of the pressure on the Buddle school, which it appears was bursting at the seams, so much so that a temporary school had been built next to the Buddle to take those children not able to fit inside the main school. At the end of 1900, an article stated that the infant school of Richardson Dees would officially be opened in January of 1901. This came with the appointment of a caretaker who it seems would not be on full payment until the rest of the school was completed. By November of 1901, it was time for the board to decide on teachers for the new school. Somewhat slightly different to how teachers are found today, as the board chose who was to be moved from school to school. The current headmaster of the Stevenson schools, Mr. Davison, became the headmaster of Richardson Dees, and the new headmaster for the Stevenson school was to be Mr. Bradley, after several rounds of voting to narrow that down to him. All teachers were chosen this way, and I have to say it must have been quite a tedious task sitting there voting for each one, with some needing several votes. But it was the way things worked then, so it had to be done. And the school board also decided the wage of the teachers at their regular meetings. On Monday, February the 24th, 1902, the Richardson Dees School was officially opened by the Mayor, William Boyd. The weather was apparently very bad. It was cold and it was raining, so it was felt the outside speeches should not go ahead, as the large crowd of, as described at the time, very fine ladies and gentlemen representing the town of Wallsend should not be kept outside for too long. The school had been built by Mr. W. T. Weir of Howden to the plans of Mr. B. J. Simpson of Newcastle at a total cost of £16,000, or in today's money around 2.5 million, which was quite a lot cheaper than the initial costs of £22,000 in 1899. It was described as a very fine building, and that nothing at this end of the high street was of such good quality. Remember, this is before both the current Coach and Horses pub and the town hall were built. Mr. Simpson presented the mayor with a gold key. This was so common that I often wondered where all these keys went to. Did anyone keep them and hand them down to other family members? And for the first time, a news article discussed this, as it would seem that this was exactly what William Boyd planned to do. So I wonder where his gold key is now. William Boyd then unlocked the door to the school with very little ceremony, and everyone was allowed to enter and escape from the rotten weather outside. It must be noted that there were two noticeable absentees at the opening of the ceremony. One was Sir J.B. Hunter, which was quite unusual, as he seemed to be at every opening ceremony, but he was currently travelling home from Canada, and the other was Robert Richardson Dees. I would assume with the latter that the bad weather and his increasing age, Mr. Dees was 94 when he died a few years later in 1908, would be factors to stop him attending, which does feel quite sad when the school was, like Wallsend Park, named after him. Once inside, many speeches took place. I will not cover them on the whole, as they are mostly just people thanking others for their work. I will mention that William Boyd apologised for not wearing his chain of office. This was apparently away in London at the time, where it was being fitted for a case to keep it in. He thanked both the builder and the architect, stating that the patience of both had no doubt been sorely tested over the 6 years of planning and discussing the building of the new school, and he felt sure they both would be very glad now that the work was completed. It's also worth a mention that although Canon Henderson thanked William Boyd for opening the school, he had apparently thought it might have been nice to get Earl Grey to do the job. He had been unanimously outvoted on that idea. It was hoped that this beautiful new school would give the children who went there the best education they could get. and after the speeches, those present were given a tour of the school. Sadly, I have not actually found any news articles giving a good description of the school, other than to say it had a large hall with 6 classrooms and separate areas for boys and girls, but it was said that everyone who was present for the opening tour was very impressed with what they saw. To end the ceremony, the guests were given drinks in the hall and several toasts were given to the architects, the builders, the people of Wallsend and the guests present at the opening ceremony. The school would open to the pupils on Tuesday, February the 25th, 1902. I have to admit I would have loved to have found some names of the first people to attend the school, but I wasn't able to do so. The infant school was demolished in around 1983, but the rest of the school still stands and is in use to this day. I am sure many people in listening to this will have gone to Richardson Dees School, often just called the Dees or sometimes Ricky Dees. I am sure many people will have memories of the school, both good and bad, as is always the case with every school. But whatever you feel about the school, it is great to see the old original building still standing more than 120 years later, so it must have been very well built. I took all of the photos used in this video a couple of months ago when I was first planning this story, so they are all very recent. I hope you have found this little story interesting, and I thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon.